The bustling Riverside Mall was especially crowded that Saturday afternoon. Marcus Thompson, a 34-year-old software engineer, walked through the mall after finishing his lunch break. He had just bought a new phone case and was heading back to his car when something caught his attention, the sound of a child crying. Marcus stopped walking and looked around. Between the crowd of shoppers rushing past, he spotted a small boy standing alone near the toy store. The child couldn't have been more than 6 years old, wearing a red Spider-Man t-shirt and blue shorts. Tears were running down his face as he looked frantically in all directions. For a moment, Marcus hesitated. As a black man, he had learned to be careful in such situations. People often misunderstood his intentions, and he had faced unfair judgment many times before. But seeing the lost child's frightened face, Marcus knew he couldn't just walk away. "I have to help," Marcus whispered to himself, adjusting his neat blue collar shirt and name badge from his company. He approached the boy slowly, making sure to keep some distance so as not to frighten him more. "Hey there, buddy. Are you okay?" Marcus asked in a gentle voice, kneeling down to the child's eye level. He stayed a few feet away, wanting the boy to feel safe and not threatened. The child looked at Marcus with tear-filled blue eyes. His small hands were clutching a toy robot he must have picked up from the store display. "I can't find my daddy," he said between sobs. "My name is Marcus," he said with a kind smile. "Can you tell me your name?" The boy wiped his eyes with his free hand. "Tommy," he replied, his voice shaky, but a little calmer now. "Nice to meet you, Tommy. That's a cool robot you got there," Marcus said, pointing to the toy. He noticed Tommy's grip on the robot relax slightly as he looked down at it. "It lights up and makes sounds," Tommy explained, momentarily distracted from his fear. "I was looking at it, and then when I turned around..." Fresh tears welled up in his eyes. "I couldn't see Daddy anymore." Marcus nodded understandingly. "It's going to be okay, Tommy. We'll find your dad. Can you tell me what he looks like?" "He's tall," Tommy said, stretching his hand up high. "He has yellow hair like mine, and he's wearing a green shirt today." Other shoppers walked past them, some giving curious glances. Marcus noticed a few disapproving looks, but he focused on helping Tommy. He knew mall security should be involved, but he didn't want to leave the child alone even for a moment. "Tommy, would it be okay if we walk together to find a security guard? They can help us find your dad faster," Marcus suggested. He could see the security desk just past the food court, about 50 feet away. Tommy looked uncertain, glancing between Marcus and the crowded mall. "But what if Daddy comes back here looking for me?" Marcus thought for a moment. "You're right. That's smart thinking. How about this? Let's sit on that bench right there." He pointed to a nearby bench that was still within view of the toy store. "That way, your dad can find you if he comes back, and we can also watch for him together." Tommy nodded slowly, and they moved to the bench. Marcus made sure to sit with enough space between them, staying visible to everyone around. He pulled out his phone and showed Tommy his company ID with his photo. "See, I work with computers just a few blocks from here," Marcus explained, hoping to make Tommy feel more secure. "Now, would you like some water? I can get you a bottle from that vending machine right there." "Yes, please," Tommy said quietly. His crying had stopped, though he still looked worried. Marcus bought a bottle of water from the nearby vending machine, keeping Tommy in his sight the entire time. As he handed the water to Tommy, he noticed the boy's hands had stopped shaking. "Thank you," Tommy said, taking small sips. "You're nice." Marcus smiled, though his heart felt heavy. He knew that somewhere in the mall, Tommy's father must be worried sick. But he also knew that helping this lost child was the right thing to do, regardless of how others might view him. As Marcus and Tommy sat on the bench, more people walked by the toy store. Each time someone with blonde hair appeared, Tommy would sit up straight, hoping it was his father, but each time his shoulders would drop when he realized it wasn't him. "Can you tell me more about that robot?" Marcus asked, trying to keep Tommy's mind off his worries. He noticed the toy was still clutched tightly in the boy's small hands. Tommy's face brightened a little. "It's a Space Explorer 3000, he explained, pressing a button that made the robot's chest light up blue. "It can walk and talk and shoot lasers." He made shooting sounds with his mouth, momentarily forgetting his fears. Marcus smiled, remembering how he used to love robots at Tommy's age. "That's really cool. Do you like other robots too?" "Yes," Tommy nodded eagerly. "I have 3 robot toys at home, but none of them are as cool as this one. His excitement faded slightly as he added, Daddy said maybe for my birthday next month. A teenage girl working at the pretzel shop across from them kept glancing their way with a worried expression. Marcus noticed her whispering to her coworker while pointing in their direction. He took a deep breath, staying calm and focused on Tommy. Your birthday's next month? How old will you be? Marcus asked, keeping his voice cheerful despite his growing concern about the attention they were attracting. 7. Tommy held up 7 fingers proudly. We're going to have a space party because I love astronauts and robots. Just then, an elderly couple walked past, giving Marcus suspicious looks. The woman clutched her purse tighter, and the man shook his head disapprovingly. Marcus felt his heart beating faster, but he maintained his composed expression for Tommy's sake. A space party sounds awesome, Marcus said, while discreetly trying to catch the eye of any passing security guards. What's your favorite planet, Tommy? Jupiter, Tommy exclaimed, because it has lots of storms and the big red spot. Did you know it's actually a giant storm? Marcus nodded, genuinely impressed. That's right. You really know your planets. Do you want to be an astronaut when you grow up? Tommy thought for a moment, taking another sip of his water. Maybe, or maybe a robot builder, or maybe both. I could build robots that go to space. A mall security guard finally walked by, but before Marcus could wave him down, the guard's radio crackled with a message about a shoplifter in another store, and he hurried away. Marcus checked his watch. They had been sitting there for 15 minutes. He knew they needed to find help soon, but he didn't want to frighten Tommy by showing his concern. You know what? Marcus said gently. I bet the security guards could help us find your dad faster. They have cameras everywhere in the mall, and they might even be able to make an announcement over the speakers. Tommy looked uncertain again. But what if Daddy comes here and we're gone? How about this? Marcus suggested. We can write a note and leave it right here on the bench. That way, if your dad comes by, he'll know exactly where to find you. Tommy seemed to like this idea. Marcus pulled out his notepad from his work bag and wrote in clear letters. Tommy is safe and looking for you. We've gone to the security desk in the food court. Marcus Thompson, wearing blue shirt with a badge. As Marcus finished writing, Tommy suddenly grabbed his arm. Look, is that Daddy? He pointed excitedly at a tall man with blonde hair walking quickly past the toy store. But as the man turned, they saw it wasn't Tommy's father. Tommy's face fell, and his eyes started welling up with tears again. Hey, it's okay, Marcus said softly. We'll find him. Should we go to the security desk now? I promise they'll help us. Tommy looked at the note on the bench, then at Marcus's kind face, and finally nodded. Okay, he said quietly, still holding the robot toy close to his chest. Marcus stood up slowly, making sure to keep a respectful distance as they prepared to walk to the security desk. He knew the next few minutes would be crucial, both for finding Tommy's father and for handling the increasing number of suspicious glances from other shoppers. Marcus and Tommy walked slowly toward the mall's security desk. Tommy stayed close to Marcus but was careful not to touch him, still holding his robot toy with both hands. The food court was busy with Saturday shoppers, and the noise of conversations and clattering trays filled the air. It's not too far now, Marcus said encouragingly. He noticed Tommy was getting tired from all the walking and emotional stress. Just past the pizza place, see? The security guards will help us find your dad right away. As they walked, a woman sitting at one of the food court tables pulled her daughter closer when they passed by. Another man stopped eating his burger to stare at them suspiciously. Marcus felt his neck getting hot under all the judgmental looks, but he kept his voice steady for Tommy's sake. Mr. Marcus? Tommy asked quietly. What if Daddy is mad at me for getting lost? Marcus's heart ached at the worry in Tommy's voice. Hey, don't think like that. Your dad will just be happy to find you. Parents don't get mad about these things. They just get scared because they love their kids so much. A security guard was sitting at the desk, talking on the phone. When he saw Marcus and Tommy approaching, he quickly ended his call and stood up. His name tag read Officer Wilson. Can I help you? Officer Wilson asked, his eyes moving between Marcus and Tommy with a mix of concern and suspicion. Marcus kept his voice calm and professional. Yes, please. This is Tommy. He got separated from his father near the toy store about 20 minutes ago. We've been waiting there, but now we thought it would be better to get help finding his dad. Officer Wilson turned his attention to Tommy. Is that true, son? Are you lost? Tommy nodded, clutching his robot tighter. Yes, I was looking at the robots, and then I couldn't find Daddy anymore. His lower lip trembled slightly. The security guard's expression softened as he looked at Tommy, but he still kept a careful eye on Marcus. What's your last name, Tommy? Morrison, Tommy answered. My daddy's name is James Morrison. Officer Wilson picked up his radio. This is Wilson at the main desk. We have a lost child, Tommy Morrison, looking for his father James Morrison. Child was separated near the toy store about 20 minutes ago. Father may be wearing a green shirt. Please respond. While they waited for a response, another security guard approached the desk. This one was younger, with the name Officer Chen on his badge. He spoke quietly to Officer Wilson, who nodded and turned back to Marcus. Sir, could I see some ID, please? Marcus slowly reached for his wallet, making sure his movements were visible and non-threatening. He pulled out his driver's license and work ID, placing them on the desk. Of course, my name is Marcus Thompson. I work at TechCore Solutions just 3 blocks from here. Officer Chen picked up the IDs and began typing the information into a computer. Tommy watched all of this with confusion, not understanding why everyone seemed so serious. Can you tell us exactly how you found Tommy? Officer Wilson asked, taking out a notepad. Marcus explained everything clearly, how he heard Tommy crying, how they waited at the bench, and why they decided to come to security. As he spoke, Tommy nodded along, confirming the story. Mr. Marcus bought me water, Tommy added helpfully, and he let me tell them about Jupiter and my robots. The radio crackled, and a voice came through. No sign of Mr. Morrison near the toy store, but we're continuing to search all areas. Officer Wilson pressed a button on his desk. A moment later, a calm voice came over the mall's speaker system. Attention shoppers. We are looking for James Morrison, father of Tommy Morrison. Please come to the security desk in the food court. Your son is safe and waiting for you. Tommy's eyes went wide at hearing his name over the speakers. Wow, everyone can hear that? That's right, Marcus said with a smile. Your dad will hear it too, wherever he is in the mall. Officer Wilson handed Marcus back his IDs. We'll need you to stay here while we locate the father, he said, his tone professional but less suspicious than before. Marcus nodded. Of course. We'll wait right here. He sat down in one of the chairs by the desk, while Tommy took the seat next to him, still fascinated by the idea that his name had been announced over the mall speakers. The tension in the air remained thick as they waited, with both security guards keeping close watch. Marcus could only hope that Tommy's father would arrive soon, though he was beginning to worry about what that reunion might bring. James Morrison's heart was pounding as he ran through the mall. His green polo shirt was now dark with sweat, and his blonde hair was messy from running his hands through it repeatedly. For the past 20 minutes, he had been searching frantically for his son Tommy. This can't be happening, he muttered to himself as he rushed past store after store. I only looked away for a second. He remembered the moment clearly. They were at the toy store, and Tommy was excited about some new robot toy. James had gotten a work call and stepped just a few feet away to answer it. When he turned back around, Tommy was gone. Now, as he searched, his fear was turning into anger, not at Tommy, but at himself for getting distracted by that phone call. He had already checked the toy store 3 times, looked through every nearby shop, and even searched all the bathrooms. Excuse me, James called out to a store clerk. Have you seen a little boy, 6 years old, blonde hair, wearing a Spider-Man shirt? The clerk shook her head. No, sorry. Did you check with security? James was about to answer when his phone rang again. It was his wife, Sarah. His hands shook as he answered. Did you find him? Sarah's worried voice came through the phone. Not yet, James said, his voice tight with stress. But I'm still looking. He has to be here somewhere. James, you need to call security if you haven't already. I know, he replied. I just thought I could find him myself. I'll call them now. As James ended the call with his wife, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Through the window of a store, he spotted one of the mall's TV screens that showed security camera feeds. On one of the screens, he saw Tommy walking with a tall black man in a blue shirt. James's fear instantly turned to panic and anger. In his stressed state, he didn't notice how carefully the man was walking, or how he kept a respectful distance from Tommy. He didn't see the security badge on the man's shirt or notice how calm Tommy appeared. Instead of walking toward them, James pulled out his phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? The operator answered. I'm at Riverside Mall, James said quickly, his voice trembling with emotion. My son, I think someone has taken my son. I can see them on the security camera. Sir, please stay calm. Can you describe what you're seeing? James watched the security feed, his fear making him see things that weren't there. A man is leading my son away. My son is 6, blonde hair, wearing a Spider-Man shirt. The man is... He hesitated for a second, then added, he's black, wearing a blue shirt. They're walking toward the food court. Sir, have you contacted mall security? No, there's no time, James said urgently. Please, you need to send someone now. My son could be in danger. We're dispatching officers immediately, the operator assured him. Please stay on the line. Have you seen any signs that your son is in distress? James wasn't really listening anymore. He was staring at the security feed, watching as Tommy and the man approached the security desk. In his panicked state, he misinterpreted everything he saw. They're at the security desk now, James told the operator, his voice rising. He's probably trying to take him out a back entrance or something. Sir, if they're at the security desk, perhaps you should. Just then, the mall speakers crackled to life. Attention shoppers. We are looking for James Morrison, father of Tommy Morrison. Please come to the security desk in the food court. Your son is safe and waiting for you. James's heart skipped a beat at hearing the announcement, but instead of feeling relief, his fear and anger only grew stronger. Still holding his phone, he began running toward the food court. I'm heading there now, he told the 911 operator, completely convinced that his son was in danger. Please hurry with those officers. As he ran, James didn't realize that his fear and prejudice were about to turn a simple misunderstanding into something much worse. At the security desk, Tommy was showing Officer Chen his robot toy while Marcus sat quietly nearby. The mall speakers had announced Tommy's father's name 3 times now, but there was still no sign of him. Officer Wilson kept checking his radio, waiting for updates from other security guards searching the mall. Suddenly, the peaceful moment was shattered by loud voices and heavy footsteps. 3 police officers burst into the food court area, their hands on their weapons. Behind them ran a man with blonde hair and a green shirt, Tommy's father. Daddy, Tommy called out happily, not understanding the tension in the air. Get away from my son, James Morrison shouted, his face red with anger and fear. Marcus slowly raised both hands, keeping them visible. His heart was racing, but his voice remained steady. Sir, please stay calm. Your son was lost. And I. Don't move, one of the police officers ordered, drawing his weapon and pointing it at Marcus. Stand up slowly and step away from the boy. Tommy's eyes went wide with fear. Why are you yelling at Mr. Marcus? He asked, his voice shaking. He helped me. He bought me water and... Tommy, come here now, James shouted, trying to move past the police officers to reach his son. Officer Wilson from mall security stepped forward quickly. Everyone needs to calm down, he said firmly. There's been a misunderstanding. This man was helping. That's not what I saw, James interrupted, pointing at Marcus. I saw him leading my son away on the security cameras. Marcus remained perfectly still, his hands raised, speaking in a clear, calm voice despite his fear. Mr. Morrison, I found Tommy crying near the toy store. We waited there for 15 minutes before coming to security for help. Please, just ask Tommy. Tommy, now crying from all the shouting, tried to explain through his tears. Daddy, Mr. Marcus is nice. He helped me find you. We wrote a note and everything. Officer Chen quickly spoke up. It's true, sir. We verified Mr. Thompson's ID, and your son has confirmed everything. We have security footage of the entire incident. The police officers looked uncertain now, their weapons still drawn but their expressions showing doubt. The one in charge, whose badge read Sergeant Roberts, spoke firmly to James. Sir, is this your son? Yes, but... Tommy, Sergeant Roberts said more gently, has this man hurt you or scared you in any way? Tommy shook his head hard, tears still running down his face. No, he helped me. He let me tell them about Jupiter and robots in space. Why is everybody being mean to him? The food court had gone completely silent. Choppers stood frozen, watching the scene unfold. Some had their phones out, recording everything. Lower your weapons, Sergeant Roberts finally ordered his officers. They obeyed, but stayed alert. Marcus slowly lowered his hands, his heart still pounding, but his face showing no anger. He had dealt with situations like this before, though never with guns drawn. Mr. Morrison, he said quietly, I understand you were scared. Any parent would be, but I only wanted to help your son. Officer Wilson stepped forward again. We have the security footage ready to show everyone. It clearly shows Mr. Thompson finding Tommy alone, waiting with him at the bench, and then bringing him here to security. Everything he said is true. James Morrison stood frozen, his face changing as the reality of what he'd done began to sink in. He looked at his crying son, at the drawn faces of the police officers, at the crowd of people watching with their phones, and finally at Marcus, the man he had just put in terrible danger because of his prejudiced assumptions. James started to speak, his voice cracking. The anger was gone from his face, replaced by growing shame. Tommy broke away from the officers and ran to his father, still clutching his robot toy. Daddy, why did you make the police be mean to Mr. Marcus? He was just helping me find you. The police officers were now putting away their weapons, looking embarrassed. Sergeant Roberts turned to Marcus. Sir, we apologize for this situation. Would you like to press any charges? Marcus looked at Tommy hugging his father, then at all the faces watching them. His next words would matter, not just for this moment, but for everyone witnessing it. Officer Wilson led everyone to the security office, away from the crowd of onlookers in the food court. The small room was filled with monitors showing different parts of the mall. Tommy sat close to his father but kept looking worriedly at Marcus, who stood quietly near the door. Let me show you exactly what happened, Officer Wilson said, typing on his computer. The largest screen came to life, showing footage from 2 hours earlier. The first camera showed Tommy and his father at the toy store. Everyone watched as James stepped away to take his phone call, and Tommy wandered deeper into the store, fascinated by the robot display. When Tommy turned around and couldn't see his father, the camera captured his growing panic. There, Officer Chen pointed to another screen. This shows Tommy leaving the store, looking for his father. The footage clearly showed Tommy becoming more upset, walking in circles near the store entrance. Then Marcus appeared in the frame, stopping when he noticed the crying child. They could all see how carefully Marcus approached, keeping his distance and kneeling to appear less threatening. Tommy watched the screen with interest. That's when Mr. Marcus asked my name, he said, his earlier tears now dried. The security footage continued, showing Marcus and Tommy sitting on the bench. They could see Marcus buying water for Tommy, showing his work ID, and keeping a respectful distance the entire time. The cameras even caught him writing the note they left on the bench. James Morrison's face grew more pale with each passing minute. The footage showed exactly what Marcus had said. He had done everything right. Everything a good person should do when finding a lost child. Here's where you called 911, Mr. Morrison, Officer Wilson said, pointing to a timestamp. You can see that at this exact moment, Mr. Thompson was already here with us at the security desk, doing exactly what he should have done. Sergeant Roberts, the police officer in charge, shook his head slowly. Mr. Thompson, he said, turning to Marcus, I want to formally apologize on behalf of the police department. We responded to a call about a possible kidnapping, but we should have assessed the situation more carefully before drawing weapons. Marcus nodded quietly. The security footage was still playing, now showing the moment when the police had burst in with their weapons drawn. Seeing it on screen made several people in the room wince. Tommy tugged at his father's sleeve. Daddy, look. He pointed at the screen showing the bench where they had waited. Mr. Marcus even saved my robot. The footage showed how Marcus had caught the toy when Tommy almost dropped it in his excitement at one point. James Morrison looked like he might be sick. The evidence was overwhelming. While he had been calling the police and assuming the worst, Marcus Thompson had been protecting and comforting his son with nothing but kindness and respect. Mr. Thompson, James finally spoke, his voice shaking. I don't know what to say. I saw you with my son on the security camera and I assumed. He couldn't finish the sentence. You assumed the worst because of what I look like, Marcus finished quietly. The room fell silent. Even Tommy seemed to understand something serious was happening. Officer Chen spoke up. We have all the footage recorded, and several witnesses made videos as well. Mr. Thompson, as Sergeant Roberts asked earlier, would you like to press charges? Everyone in the room looked at Marcus. James Morrison stood frozen, knowing his actions could have had terrible consequences. Tommy looked confused, still holding his robot toy tight. Marcus took a deep breath. His next words would affect not just this family, but potentially many others who would hear about this incident. He looked at Tommy, who gave him a small, worried smile, then at James Morrison, whose face showed a mix of fear, shame, and remorse. Before I answer that, Marcus said carefully, I think we all need to acknowledge exactly what happened here today. He gestured to the security footage, still playing silently on the screens around them. Because it's not just about me and your family anymore. It's about something much bigger. Marcus looked around the security office at all the faces watching him, the ashamed police officers, the concerned security guards, the guilt-ridden James Morrison, and innocent Tommy, who still didn't fully understand what had happened. I'm not going to press charges, Marcus said finally. His voice was firm but gentle, but I have a different request. Sergeant Roberts nodded. What would you like us to do, Mr. Thompson? I want this to be a learning moment, Marcus explained. I want the police department to use this security footage in their training. Show officers how to assess situations before rushing to judgment. Show them what happened here today. Officer Wilson spoke up from his chair at the security desk. The mall would be willing to share all our footage. We should also update our protocols for handling lost children situations. Tommy, who had been quiet for a while, suddenly asked, Does this mean Mr. Marcus isn't in trouble anymore? No, buddy. Marcus smiled softly at him. I'm not in trouble, but your dad and I need to have an important talk. Is that okay? James Morrison's face was a mix of relief and shame as he nodded. Yes, please. I owe you so much more than just an apology. Sergeant Roberts turned to his fellow officers. We'll need statements from everyone. We can do that later. Right now, I think these gentlemen need some privacy. He gestured to a small break room connected to the security office. As Marcus and James walked into the break room, Tommy tried to follow, but Officer Chen gently stopped him. Hey Tommy, want to see how our security cameras work? You can help me watch the monitors. In the break room, Marcus sat down at a small table. James took the seat across from him, his hands shaking slightly as he wiped his eyes. I almost got you killed today, James said, his voice breaking, because of assumptions I made, because of prejudices I didn't even want to admit I had. I could have ruined your life, or worse, ended it, and you were just helping my son. Marcus was quiet for a moment before speaking. When I first saw Tommy crying, I almost walked away, he admitted, because I knew something like this could happen. It's happened before, maybe not this extreme, but the looks, the assumptions, they're always there. But you helped him anyway, James said softly. Yes, because he needed help. He was scared and alone, and that mattered more than my fears about how people might react. Marcus leaned forward slightly. Your son is a bright, kind kid, Mr. Morrison. When he looks at me, he just sees someone who helped him, who listened to him talk about robots in space. He doesn't see color. James wiped more tears from his eyes. Please call me James. And I don't know how to make this right. You start by acknowledging what happened, which you're doing now, Marcus said. Then you work on changing, not just yourself, but helping others change too. That security footage? It tells a powerful story. It shows both the problem and the solution. Through the break room window, they could see Tommy excitedly pointing at something on one of the security monitors, while Officer Chen explained how the cameras worked. I want to make this public, James said suddenly. The footage, what happened. People need to see it. They need to see what I did wrong and how it could have ended tragically. Will you help me do that? Marcus studied James's face, seeing genuine remorse and a desire to make things right. Yes, he answered, but not to shame you. We'll do it to help others learn from this moment. James nodded, then hesitated before asking, Would you be willing to stay and talk to Tommy a bit more? He was really excited about sharing his robot knowledge with you. But I understand if you want to leave after everything I put you through. Marcus looked through the window at Tommy, who was now showing his robot toy to Officer Chen with the same enthusiasm he had shown earlier on the bench. Despite everything that had happened, Marcus couldn't help but smile. 1 month later, the Riverside Mall looked very different. New signs about lost children procedures were posted throughout the building, and security guards wore bright, easily visible vests. The biggest change wasn't visible. It was in people's hearts and minds. The security footage of what happened that day had gone viral. Local news stations played it, social media shared it, and people everywhere talked about it. But unlike many viral videos of racial incidents, this one showed something different. It showed healing and change. Marcus Thompson sat in the mall's food court, at the same table where everything had happened a month ago. Across from him sat Tommy Morrison, who was proudly showing off his newest robot toy, the Space Explorer 3000 that his father had bought him for his 7th birthday. And look, Mr. Marcus. Tommy pressed a button, making the robot's eyes light up. It can dance too. James Morrison watched from the next table, smiling as his son excitedly explained every feature of the toy to Marcus. In the past month, James had kept his promise. He had worked with the police department and mall security to create new training videos. He had also started speaking at community meetings about his experience, openly sharing how his prejudices had almost led to tragedy. The police training program starts next week, James said during a pause in Tommy's robot demonstration. They want both of us to speak to the new officers. Are you still okay with that? Marcus nodded. Yes, I think it's important. Change happens one person at a time, one story at a time. Officer Chen walked by their table, now wearing one of the new security vests. He waved at Tommy, who waved back enthusiastically. The mall's security team had become local heroes after the footage showed how they helped handle the situation. My teacher showed our class the video, Tommy said suddenly, putting down his robot. She said you were both very brave. Mr. Marcus for helping even though he was scared, and Daddy for admitting he made a mistake. James reached over and squeezed his son's shoulder gently. The video had been edited appropriately for schools, focusing on the importance of kindness and overcoming prejudice. It had already been shown in several local elementary schools as part of their character education programs. Speaking of school, Marcus said, reaching into his bag, I brought something for you, Tommy. He pulled out a children's book about famous black scientists and astronauts. Since you love space so much, I thought you might enjoy learning about some amazing people who worked with NASA. Tommy's eyes lit up as he opened the book. Look, Daddy, this astronaut built robots for space. James watched his son's excitement with grateful eyes. In the past month, he had worked hard to educate himself and